So good evening everyone. Today the topic that I have selected is urogenital fistula. Basically we'll discuss two things, VVF, that is vesicovaginal fistula, and ureterovaginal fistula, prevention and cure. So what I'll focus is mainly on what is the presentation and how we are supposed to manage the initial problem when patient presents with leakage of urine per vaginally post hysterectomy or post surgery. With a tribute to our senior respected late Dr. Arun Kumar Chaudhary sir, he was present in both the talks that I have given in IMA before, in 2019 and in 2015. We all miss you, sir. And about myself, from 2015 to 18 I did my MCH from Bangalore. After that I worked in Bangalore for a year, and from 2020 onwards I am practicing in Begusarai. So about the talk now. Now what is a fistula? Fistula represents an extra anatomical communication between two or more epithelial or mesothelial lined body cavities. In gynecological fistulas, the nomenclature is done in which the urological part, that is the from where the fistula starts, that is given first, and the gynae part, that is the from which the connection is there, that is given second. So if there is a communication between the bladder and the vagina, that is a vesicovaginal fistula, which we can see this one. If the communication is between the ureter and the vagina, it's a ureterovaginal fistula. And if it is between the urethra and the vagina, ureterovaginal, these fistulas are rare. The most common ones are the VVF and the UVF. We'll discuss these two fistulas mainly. Fistulas are most often acquired post-surgically, and there is considerable emotional and psychological distress associated with this kind of fistulas. Now etiology, if we see obstetric fistulas which are coming down now, previously this was the most common fistula, which I think our senior gynecologist, they must have seen many cases. We see it rarely now. This mainly happens due to the obstructed labor or prolonged labor, wherein the baby's head is stuck and it presses over the urinary bladder and urinary bladder urethra and the posterior wall of the bladder, leading to fistula formation. These fistulas are very difficult to treat. They are large and often are untreated for very long time. Next, the most common that we see now is the gynecological cause. Operative injuries are the most common ones. Abdominal hysterectomy, laparoscopic hysterectomy. Now this is one of the most common cause. The rate of iatrogenic bladder injury during a hysterectomy is 0.05 to 1%. Studies have noted high risk of ureteral injuries in laparoscopic surgery. Bladder injury is almost equivalent between both the laparoscopic and open surgery. Other rare causes are traumatic, malignancy and radiation. Again, traumatic is easier to treat. Malignancy and radiation fistulas are difficult to treat. If we see worldwide data, prolonged obstructed labor is the leading cause of VVF. Worldwide, prolonged obstructed labor is the leading cause of VVF. Now it is an uncommon occurrence in developed world. So in our country also, iatrogenic injury is the most common cause of fistula. Now, what are the risk factors of UVF and VVF during hysterectomy? So if the patient has undergone a previous surgery, especially a lower segment cesarean section, that LSCS, or any other pelvic surgeries also, it increases the risk of bladder injury or ureteric injury during hysterectomy. Endometriosis, abdominal, this anatomical distortion such as very large fibroid, as we can see in this picture, these patients are at high risk of bladder and ureter injury. Body habitus, a very obese patient is always high risk for any kind of injury. Anemic, malnourished and even steroid users are at high risk of injury. Now, the most important phase where the ureteric and the VVF occurs is during the learning phase of a surgeon. When the surgeon is learning whatever a newer procedure, either laparoscopic or even open, that is the time when maximum number of UVF and VVF happens. So what we can do to minimize that? See, what we should do, we should select cases properly, avoid difficult cases, large fibroid, previous CS, and fixed uterus and endometriosis. Conversion threshold should be low. If in doubt, immediately convert or call for help. A qualified assistant, we should try to have a qualified assistant, good quality instrument and a good OT setup. All these are easy to say, but it is always difficult for a newer surgeon to accomplish all this, and as we know how difficult it is to have a qualified assistant and a good quality instrument in initial practice. So normally injuries are most commonly seen when we are starting our career. This is a video. We'll see here how, see, this is a laparoscopic hysterectomy wherein we can see this is the bladder, this area is the bladder, this is the uterine artery, not very clearly seen here. So in this, what will happen while using the hook, I see uterine artery is not coagulated properly, it has started to bleed and now it is being clamped blindly. So ureter is somewhere down here, so chances of ureteric injury is very high in this kind of cases. So proper, how to identify a bladder injury? These are 4 R's. First R is recognition. When in doubt, always place a Foley's catheter first. Fill the bladder with normal saline or anything that gives color methylene blue and look for any leakage. So around 200 ml to 250 ml of NS mixed with 5 ml or 2 ml of methylene blue, we can fill the bladder and see for any leakage. If there is a leakage, next step is restoration of the anatomy. We should freshen up the margins. If there is a like cautery burn, we should freshen up the margin and then repair it. If unable to repair yourself, you should always call for a help. The last step is rest to the bladder. At least wait for 3 weeks, leave the Foley's catheter in situ for 3 weeks. Now VVF happens mainly due to unrecognized bladder injury at the time of surgery. What happens when the bladder injury is unrecognized? It results in formation of urinoma. Urinoma is what? It's a collection of urine in the abdominal cavity so this is a case I'll discuss. What happened? A patient presented to me, hysterectomy was done around 10 days back. Patient was alright, she was on Foley's catheter, she was discharged after removing Foley's. She had reduced urine output after that and there was abdominal distension. So she went back to her surgeon who operated and he got an ultrasound done. Ultrasound showed hemoperitoneum. Ultrasound report mein aaya ki there is collection of blood or something fluid is there in the abdominal cavity. So then we spoke and we decided to go for a cystoscopy first and look what has happened in the bladder. So when I placed my cystoscope, I was able to see these 2 holes, these 2 holes in the bladder, as you can see here and here. These are the 2 holes, and the urine was not leaking out of the vagina, it was going in the abdominal cavity. Patient was, general condition was poor, creatinine was high 4 and counts were raised, but still we had to do something. After a lot of discussion, we decided we'll put in she was under spinal anesthesia, we decided we'll put in a trocar and have a look. So I placed a trocar. This is inside the abdomen cavity. You can see how much clear urine is collected there and how much inflammation and inflammation is there, and peritonitis, everything is there. So I gave a thorough lavage. See, this is above the liver. I can see the fluid. So see, this is the liver. So much fluid is collected above the liver. After that, I thought we'll do some adenolysis and see where that opening is there in the bladder. Luckily, I was able to make out that opening. So you can see in just 3-4 days how much adhesion and how much inflammation has developed. This was that two opening which we were seeing from inside the abdominal cavity. Now from the bladder. Now this is from inside the abdominal cavity. These two opening. So what I did, I closed this two opening using 2,0-Vicryl. Although it is not advised to do in inflammation state, but I thought that is the best course of treatment. So we have put in 2 sutures. And thankfully I was able to save the day. Patient recovered well. Now she is doing good, still on Foley's catheter. 1.5 months has passed, she is still on Foley's catheter. But no leakage. So after closing this, we have placed a omental patch over the suture line. This is a very uncommon presentation, rarely we see it. So the most common presentation that we see is this. The urine will follow the path of least resistance and drain through the vaginal cuff, a vaginal cuff suture line. So this is the most common presentation that we'll see. So when we'll put, a patient will present with leakage of urine per vagina after surgery, and if we'll put so patient is referred to me after around I think 12 or 13 days. So I put in a scope and this is the fistula we can see. So much infected tissue, slough, everything is there. So I have seen this, this is the cystoscopy, this we can see the suture material in the vagina. This is the hole in the bladder. So now what to do? We can't do an immediate repair. The patient will eat the head of the operating surgeon and even ask you what to do next. So immediate management is very important. We have to counsel the patient very nicely that now in this condition we can't operate. Normally what I do, I call them in the OT, so although we should not, but I call them in the OT and show them so much infection is there, so much pus is there. This is not the right time to operate. What we'll do, we'll wait for some time, let the infection settle, then only we'll operate. And we have to address the leakage of urine. We should ask them to use pads, appliances, and the foul smelling urine that causes problem. We have to counsel them to drink a lot of water. Because what they think, if we drink less water, less leakage will happen. But it's not like that. What leakage will happen, that will be very foul smelling and infection causes a lot of problem. So if we take these simple measures, the anger of the patient comes down, and you can then the patient, you have to soothe the patient. That is most important. Now when to operate? Normally the waiting period is at least 3 months. So this is the initial picture of the fistula. We can see the necrotic material that like I have shown, and this is the picture before the surgery. See how healthy the margins are. Everything is healed. There is no necrotic tissue. This is the time when we operate. So this is almost 3.5 months post surgery, initial surgery. So this should be the look before we operate. So now, what is the basic principles of VVF surgery? So whatever way we do the surgery, either vaginally, abdominally or laparoscopically, the basic principle never changes. It always remains the same. So what are those? These are that the repair should be tension free, watertight, uninfected, tissue at the site of repair should be healthy, well vascularized, and we have to place something in between. Interposition flap is very important. Most commonly used is omentum, otherwise we can use peritoneum or appendix epiploicae from the sigmoid colon. Next, this is a take home message. First attempt at VVF repair has the highest chance of success. So making it imperative that surgery is well planned and performed by a surgeon experienced in fistula repair. Now we should never take a risk in VVF repair. If any doubt, we should postpone, we should not be in a hurry. Because if the first attempt in repair fails, second attempt chances of failure is even higher. And normally the patient will lose faith if first attempt fails. So I will only discuss the laparoscopic repair. Open and vaginal I will not discuss. Laparoscopic repair of VVF is a very new thing. It was only started in 1994, and the success rate is almost equivalent to transabdominal, and it avoids the morbidity of open surgery. Only that laparoscopic surgery requires a good laparoscopic experience and a good intracorporeal suturing experience. I'll just show you the pictures of what we do. First, we'll pass a ureteric catheter or catheter from the fistula tract. This is the bladder, and this is the bladder above, and this is the vagina down. So we have passed a ureteric catheter through and through, and this is the fistula here. So we have passed a ureteric catheter through and through the fistula, out from the bladder, out from the vagina. How this helps? This helps in recognition of the fistula while operating abdominally. So when we go abdominally, we'll open the bladder and then look for the fistula, circumferentially excise the fistula, and then close the vagina and bladder one by one. So this is a short video of the entire surgery. So that's the see, this is the fistula here. This I am placing a ureteric catheter in the right ureteric orifice. Both the ureteric orifices are cannulated so that there is no risk of ureteric injury during VVF repair. So we place this ureteric catheter and remove it in post-op. This is the right, this is the left ureteric orifice, and a different color ureteric catheter is used. This is the right angle forceps from vagina. The right angle forceps is coming from the vagina, and ureteric catheter is passed from the bladder, and it is pulled out from the vagina. It's of a different color so that we can recognize it easily. So all the three ureteric catheters are out. This is from inside the abdominal cavity. Now here, if we see, this is the Foley's bulb we can see. This is the urinary bladder, and down here is the vagina. So fistula will be here somewhere. This is a very neat and clean case with very less adhesion. This is the only case where this much less adhesion was there. Normally all these cases contains lot of adhesion, and adenolysis only takes lot of time. So this page we can see. So the first step is to open the bladder. So first do the adenolysis, remove all adhesions. In this case there was small adhesion of the bowel here, we can see. So better is to use a scissor and remove all the adhesions. Now the surgery will start, and then the first step is to open the bladder. So a normal hook is what I use. Monopolar current will open the bladder. This is the opening in the bladder. So we'll see that same yellow color ureteric catheter which was passed in the fistula, as we can see it here, is the yellow color ureteric catheter that was passed through the, and this blue is the this blue is the uterine manipulator which I am using to elevate the vagina, and also to prevent the leakage of gas of the CO2 from the vagina. So now what we'll do, we'll open up the bladder properly to visualize the fistula properly. Now this is the most important step of fistula, where we have to separate the bladder and the vaginal wall. So here most important thing is to stay in between the bladder and vagina, not to create a buttonhole in bladder or in vagina. That creates a lot of problem. Identifying correct plane in this is very important. Use of scissor is important. We have to use scissor, not to use current much. And this is one surgery where we need a good assistant. so that like who can do suction, who can do like help you out in this. So we have to create a plane between the bladder and the vagina without creating any buttonholes. So now this is the bladder, and this is the bladder wall, entirely separated. Down here is the vagina. So now we can see that bladder and vagina almost 2-3 centimeters has been separated. Now what we'll do, we'll freshen up the margins. See, this is again a controversial thing. Many people say freshening up the margin is not required, but I feel at least whatever dead and necrotic tissue is there, we should remove it. Freshened up margin is better. So a 2-0 Vicryl is what I am using to close the vagina in running fashion. A lot of suturing is required in vesicovaginal fistula, so it takes little longer, like time duration in the surgery is very high. Almost 2.5 hours is what it is required. So you need a patient anesthesiologist for this. Now I am closing the bladder, that also in running fashion. In the end, we'll fill the bladder and see for any leakage, and then place an omental patch between the vagina and the bladder. So we can see here the ureteric orifice, this ureteric catheter in the ureteric orifice. This is the left side ureteric catheter seen. So this helps us in recognizing the ureteric orifice and prevents the injury, like injury to the to the ureter during this repair. So continuous suturing is done, and a few interrupted sutures are also placed. Now what I'll do, I'll fill up the bladder and look for any leakage. We'll see that around 200 to 300 ml of water is placed. You can see the bladder is filling up, and there is no leakage. So the next and the final step is placing an interposition flap. That is the best thing in abdominal cavity is omentum. So what we do, we place a omentum between the vagina and the bladder. So the omentum should be placed like in front of the vaginal suture. It should not be placed just behind or below it. It should go and cover the entire vaginal suture. So I am taking it in front of this suture line. So the next is ureterovaginal fistula, where there is a communication between the ureter and the vagina. This is now more commonly seen because this is more common in laparoscopic surgery. In laparoscopic surgery, as we use lot of thermal energy, and in thermal energy the spread is not fixed. So that spread leads to ureteric injury. That also is pressure. So just 2 slides about the anatomy. Ureter is divided into 2 parts, abdominal and pelvic. The pelvic is what we are concerned with. The pelvic part, the ureter descends over the common iliac artery at the bifurcation of the internal and external iliac artery. This is what water under the bridge we say. The ureter passes just below the uterine artery. So it's just like water flowing under the bridge. The bridge is the uterine artery. So this is the uterine vessel that is like a bridge, and the water that ureter flows below it. and the ureter is found just less than 1.5 centimeter lateral to the cervix, passing under the uterine artery and then medially over the anterior vaginal fornix. These are the places where the ureter can get injured. So at the pelvic brim while clamping the ovarian vessel, I think rarely this happens but can happen. In the broad ligament while clamping the uterine vessel, this happens when there is a bleeding and we try to catch hold it again. Like if it bleeds and we try to hold it again, then only chances of ureteric injury increases. In the ureteric tunnel at the vault of the vagina before it enters the bladder, it is estimated that around 52 to 82% of iatrogenic injury occurs during gynecological surgery. So how does the injury occurs? Either crushing from misapplication of the clamp. This happens while we try to control the bleeding when there is a slippage of a vessel. Ligation with suture. This also happens commonly. Transection partial or complete. And ischemia from stripping of blood vessel, this presents later on. Cauterization is the most commonly what is happening nowadays, electrical, thermal, laser or even stapler injuries during laparoscopic surgery. This is one video where we see if we have to stay this ovarian vessels have already been dealt with. This we are in going down, so we have to be careful here. If we go medially down here, then chances of ureteric injury is very high. As we will see in this video, how the surgeon goes little down medially, which leads to high risk or which leads to ureteric injury. So we are supposed to stay and see that mistakes here. The cameraman, he is very close to the operating field. He should be a panoramic view. He should show the video from behind so that the surgeon should understand where he is. He is very close to the operating field. This is wrong. Next, see there is a bleeding, went in, just cauterized. With the entire thing clamped it, cauterized. What is burning, we don't know. The ureter gone. Patient will present 8th, 9th day with urine leakage. Next. So, can we intraoperatively evaluate or know about ureteric injury? It's very difficult. Cystoscopy, like we have to have very high suspicion. We can do a cystoscopy to assess the urine efflux, but these are not guaranteed. Even with efflux, there can be a partial injury of the ureter. So what we can do in a difficult case, large fibroid or where we suspect that ureters can get injured, place a degestant beforehand. Recognition of injury as early as possible in post-operative phase is very important. What are the signs, symptoms? A stormy post-operative period, flank pain, there is persistent ileus, lower abdominal mass, unexplained fever, and the most common presentation, that is watery discharge from the vagina. Post-operative evaluation, what we should do, addition to physical examination, their lab investigation and ultrasound can give you like a picture of hydronephrosis. Sometime rarely we see bilateral ureteric ligation where the patient will obviously present with anuria, where we need to operate immediately. The investigation of choice is CT urography, where we can easily see which ureter is communicating with the vagina. Or if we can do in OT, then cystoscopy with retrograde pyelogram is the best investigation or investigation of choice. I always do it before doing BVF to ascertain that there is no concomitant ureterovaginal fistula. This is one test, I think urologists won't do it, but I think very commonly done. 3 swab test where we place 3 swabs, one inside the vagina, one after that, and we place methylene blue in the bladder. If the middle one is wet, bluish in color, BVF. If the top one is wet without any color, it's a UVF. Now what next? If we can place a degestant, that is very good. What it will do, the leakage will stop and the benefit is a happy patient. Even though fistula won't heal, but the patient will be dry for some time, and then we can plan the definitive surgery later. But it is not possible always. I'll show two cases what has happened. This is a case of complete ureter transection. So when I went in, I did a ureteroscopy. There was a blind ending cavity. We could see suture material, blue color vicryl we were able to see, but there was no distal lumen I was not able to visualize it. So we can see all suture material. So I was in the abdominal cavity almost. So I came out and planned, and then the patient was planned for surgery later. This is the next case wherein I think myself and the surgeon both were lucky. The best part was the patient was referred to me early. Came on, I think, 8th or 9th day post-op with leakage of urine. So when I did ureteroscopy, I was able to see a suture passing from in the ureter. We'll see that now. So in this case, we'll see if you can make out here also. You can make out here, this is the suture passing through the ureter. So while taking a bite, the ureter went through the ureter and patient was leaking continuously. So now what to do? That time I didn't have laser also, so I thought we'll go in and out 4 or 5 times, try to break the suture. So I crossed it, so you can see the suture here nicely. This is the suture which has passed through the ureter. So what I did, I went 3-4 times, came out, went in again, and luckily the suture broke. Once the suture broke, you'll see how the ureter also opens up. And after placing a degestant, patient was absolutely all right. There was no residual problem after that, even after removing the stent. It's a old case, like 1 or 1.5 year, 1 year back. So we can see now how the ureter is opened up nicely. So in the end, I placed a degestant. So now, management of ureteric injury depends upon the level of the injury. In gynecological surgery, the most common level is the lower third of the ureter. If the lower third is injured, the most commonly performed surgery is ureteroneocystostomy. See, timing of this surgery is not important, because here what we do, we divide the ureter, re-implant it on the bladder. We don't look for the fistula or do anything about the fistula. The fistula doesn't matter here. So we can even do it on the day where we have diagnosed the case. On the same day we can do it. So timing or delaying this surgery is not required. So ureteric injury we don't need to delay. Only if the patient is fit for surgery we can do it. So lower third injury, ureteroneocystostomy. If the length is smaller, then we can go for a Bowry flap or a Swas hitch. So this is Swas hitch. We fix the bladder to the Swas muscle so that a length can be achieved. These are other methods which we use rarely. This is again a short video of a ureteric fistula, wherein patient was leaking for last 1 year almost. And very young patient, only I think 26 or 25 years old. So here what is going on? I've dissected the ureter. I'm lifting up the ureter with its blood supply. We can see the course of the ureter here very nicely. You can see this ureter is going here, going inside, and will join the bladder somewhere here. So adhesions of the bladder is removed. Now holding the bladder with instrument is not that good, so I am using this vessel loop to hold the bladder. Dissected the ureter completely. Now we'll fill up the bladder. Now what we have to do, we have to mobilize the entire bladder. So the bladder is stuck to the anterior abdominal wall. We have to mobilize it and then bring down the bladder completely. Here in this mobilization of the bladder is very important on both sides, because we need to have length so that the ureter can be anastomosed tension free to the bladder. There should not be any tension to this anastomosis. So now the ureter is just divided. We don't look for the fistula. We just divide the ureter at a healthy site. And there is no leakage from the distal end. It won't happen. Now the bladder is opened, filled with normal saline, and then bladder is opened. First the muscles are divided and then the mucosa is divided, and a mucosa to mucosa anastomosis is done. And a DJ stent is placed. So this is the bladder has been opened. You can see this is the buttonhole opening in the bladder. Now we are taking suture from the ureter to the bladder. Fixing the bladder ureter to the, this is ureteroneocystostomy, wherein the ureter is fixed to the or joined to the bladder at a newer place. So it's a ureteroneocystostomy. Here the guide wire is placed, a DJ stent, double J stent is placed, and then the opening is closed completely. Again, suturing is very important in these cases. So after this, a muscular layer is fixed over the new cystostomy. So now these are the most common, or the take-home message. Most common site, pelvic brim of the injuries. Most common site is pelvic brim near the infundibulopelvic ligament. Most common procedure that leads to ureteric injury is still total abdominal hysterectomy. Most common type of injury is obstruction. Most common activity is attempting to achieve hemostasis. I think this is where we have to be careful. Where there is a bleeding, we should not be in a hurry to catch hold of it, wherein we suspect that ureteric injury can happen. Most common time of diagnosis is a 50-50 split between intra-op and post-op. And most common long-term sequelae is none. Patient may need a repeat surgery, that is important. After the surgery, the patient completely recovers. There is no residual problem left. So what important take-home message from my side is that if there is leakage of urine, we should not tell the patient that nothing will happen, it will be all right. We should at least get her investigated, and if there is a fistula, we should treat it properly. Thank you. Few of my patients.